All right, guys, finally a really nice day. It's calm, so we're gonna try to put the roof steel on this west side of the house. They're like almost 28-foot pieces. We got our drip edge all on. I measured the roof. I knew that the peak was just a little bit wider because of those drop purlins we grew just a touch. So I want to make sure this first piece is square. But we're gonna try to get this whole side done today, which I think we can, as long as I can get the skid steer with my steel along this side. It's kind of tight, but I think I'll be able to get it in there. Just line it right up to the edge, Dave.
Okay.
Deal with it on the other end. So you right where you need to be?
Yep.
All right, do it on each, not in the middle, do it on each edge.
4.5. 4.5. Seven eighths. Just over an inch. Yep.
Well, we want an inch, so.
Okay. Up just a hair. An eighth. Right there's good.
Now make sure you're going into you're gonna hit the fascia board, you know what I mean?
Okay.
You're far enough up that you're not gonna go through the front. And stay out, like, so there's like a 1/8 to 1/4 inch gap on that. All right, measure it.
16th short.
That's fine.
We're even now, 16th short.
Okay, then just run with that.
Okay.
So put another screw in. And if you need to measure up, if you can eye it, that's fine. Just make sure you're up far enough that it goes into the...
I'm 2.5 inches up.
Okay. Look on, after you put that one in, look underneath and see if you're going into the fascia board or if you're going just through the... Sit flush with that one.
No, it is.
So all you got to do, Jake,
Yeah.
line that edge up with the corner of this edge. If this one's right, screw that corner, and
Okay.
then we adjust that corner where it needs to go.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
we're just tacking all these sheets on here. We're screwing them across the top, screwing them across the bottom. We're running square. The most important piece is that first piece. It's like anything, that first piece, if it's not square, you're gonna struggle the whole way through. So as I come down this last rib, I'm marking 24 inches on center. This has plywood sheathing on it, but we still want to hit the purlins if we can. We're using 1.5 inch screws. So I'm measuring off that top purlin and marking 24s all the way down so that we can still go through the plywood and into the purlins. So once we get this all on, we'll come back and screw it all off. All done yesterday. Went pretty smooth, but it was pretty simple. Today, it's super windy, probably gonna rain later, but we're gonna start putting our W valley flashing up these valleys. And this is gonna be a little tricky because I'm standing on 512. It pitch breaks down there to 312. And then we have an 812 A-frame. So we're gonna start at the bottom, work our way up. But this point right here is going to be probably the biggest pain, just because there's 3 different pitches that come together here. So we'll figure it out and get it waterproofed. But step 1 is I'm gonna start here at the bottom, get my bottom marked, and then get that all cut and work my way up to the top. All right, we have our first piece set in there, and I snapped a line up so I know I'm gonna stay nice and straight so this doesn't have any kinks in it. Keep a 1 inch overhang here because that's what my steel is gonna overhang. And then you can see we cut and bent this over just to make that look a little bit nicer. So now I'll nail this in. We'll do a 6 inch overlap here and take this one up. And this is gonna be a little tricky here because we have this valley coming up here, and then this one turns a little bit and goes up. All right guys, we have 812 A-frame pitch here, 512 here, and then 312 right down here. So I brought this W valley flashing up. It's a little bit above that point, but where this little point of the W meets this valley. And then I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna slide it down over the top and push it in like it, where it meets right there. So we will tape before I fasten this, and then we will run a bead of silicone along there, and then we should be good to go. So what I gotta do now is I just have to get that point up there and make sure I'm running straight up the valley. So that's what we're gonna do. All right, here's our first overlap. There's a bead of silicone. I have like 16, 20 inches of overlap here because I just slid this piece down till it worked right where right how I liked it. So this piece here now will slide down and come across this line. And there's only about 1.5 inches of overlap here. So what I do is I take zip flashing. This is the same flashing that I use on the sills of my windows, and I run it along that line up over the top, and then I do a second one, and that extends our flashing up. So if there was ever to be like an ice dam or something here, we would be protected. So probably not completely necessary, but I like going a little bit above and beyond just to give us a little bit more protection. And then you also have this synthetic paper under that runs all the way down, and so water could escape there too, but I don't ever see it getting through this. So we'll get that good and pressed down, and then we'll slide this piece down, bead a silicone across here, and we should be good to go. All right, so I got it all the way up there. I'm short one piece, so I'm gonna do the other side, and then when I get my final piece, I'll do that point. All right, guys, we're tackling this W flashing. And I've done my fair share of W flashing. I just haven't done my fair share at these peaks where two valleys meet together. So it's really difficult for me to explain something that I'm not proficient at. So how I am tackling this is I'm just making my cuts all at the very end of this W. And once I get it right, I'll transfer those all down so I can extend all this flashing up to protect this. But I'm doing it down here, so if I screw it up, I'm not ruining this entire piece, and I'll have enough to finish the project. So this is what it's going to look like where this point meets, and then this is going to get bent over to protect this ridge. So now that I got all my angles, we're just going to measure down, I think probably like 8 to 12 inches, transfer all these marks, recut it, bend it, and then we'll put it over. And I'm gonna use, I've had a couple valleys. This will all get covered with the ridge cap, so what I'll do is we'll silicone all this, but we'll also cover it with that zip flashing. You're never gonna see this point right here because the ridge is gonna come over and die into the roof up here. So just being honest, this isn't something I do all the time or have to do all the time, and that's one of those things you just have to figure out. So by building a template right at the end, you can kind of figure out where you're right, where you're wrong, and then transfer them down. Or overlap we have, Jake?
20 inches.
20 inches, so we'll go 10 because that'll give us room for 2 screw ups. So mark that down 10. I wanted to add a 1/2 inch here. That down 10. You grab that straight edge, Jake. I take this point down 10, and then that's going to go all the way through. And we're getting that. Oh, nice here. Good. Alright guys, we made our way through this. Underneath where both of these W valleys meet, we have our synthetic paper, and we have one that runs continuously down this whole valley. So that's our first layer protection. Underneath this point right here, I used zip flashing just to protect where all these points meet. If water was somehow make its way through that, the zip tape would shed it onto the synthetic and it would run down underneath this all the way out the eave. Then this valley comes up underneath. This one comes up, overlaps here. There's a underlap and an overlap here, and then we silicone this point. I know this doesn't look the prettiest, but this will all be covered because we're going to bring our ridge. Once we get all our steel panels in, our ridge will come over and die up here, which should shed most of the water and protect this point. We did silicone this all, so should be good to go. And once I get a piece of ridge up here, I'm going to use, and I know where it's going to cover, I'm going to take a piece of this flashing and I'm going to put it over this point, like so. So that will be another layer of protection here. I just don't want to put this on yet until I get a piece of ridge up here, so I know I'm not going to extend this out past where it's going to be seen. This should be, I should be able to run this just like this and tape it all down, and it should all be covered, but I just want to make sure. So we'll get a piece of that up here, and then we'll get this on. Alright guys, we are getting ready to cut our steel for that A-frame, and so we have it all laid out here. It's not too windy right at the time, so I'm hoping it remains that way. We're going to go make our measurements, and we're going to snap a line so we can cut all this at once instead of cutting a piece coming down and so on and so forth. But we do have a pitch break, so we're going to have a 312 angle, and then wherever that point is, it's going to turn to a 512. So we're going to go up there and measure. getting ready to put our ridge cap on this A-frame. Got this whole side done. We're gonna start working down through here, but we want to finish all this up because it's supposed to rain tomorrow. So you can see this is the danger point right here. We've got it overlapped, flashed underneath, and then I flashed over the top. The ridge cap will come over, tuck underneath there, and then this will all flow downhill, and it's good and protected. So I feel pretty good about this. Don't feel like we're gonna have any problems. Goes underneath. You lined up with your mark?
Yep.
We gotta come down to get, just lay it right next to it. I'm gonna have to hold this edge up. All right.
So how far up do you go with that?
Just like maybe a ½ inch up underneath is all I do. And then I run the screw so it goes through the top of them. Have all of the metal on the roof finally, and we're gonna put our ridge cap on. And this house came with a 6-inch ridge cap. I actually like the wider ones because I just feel like they're easier to put on. But it's a vented ridge, so we have vented soffits on the bottom, and then we're gonna have a vented ridge. So this is the seal that will go between the ridge cap and the metal, and it's vented. It'll keep wind-driven rain out, but it'll allow hot air to escape through the ridge. So we're gonna roll this out across the top, and then when we put that ridge on, it'll squish down where the ribs are. So it's a little bit of a pain, but shouldn't be too bad, I hope. Alright guys, I want to talk about this ridge just for a quick second. When you're putting these up and Don't worry if you get oil canning. That is completely normal on these ridges, especially when you are using the closure strips that are big and thick, because it is almost next to impossible to get that thing perfectly straight, and you're putting a screw in every rib, and it's just making a little indent, and it's going to cause oil canning. The good thing is it's way up there and you're never going to be able to see it. So the important thing is that the screws go down through the rib and into your purlin. So at least for me, I've never been able to get those perfect without any oil canning at all. And metal inherently has oil canning. If you look at these panels, the reason they put these indentations in the middle is to hide a lot of that. So as it heats up, cools down, it expands, contracts, and it's just part of having metal. So don't be too concerned about that. Just do the best you can. Make sure your screws go down through into your purlin. We just finished up this ridge cap. It's got a little oil canning, not too bad, but that's the wrap on the roof. So this side here took us a couple hours, but this side over here we had to cut almost every single piece. We had this transition trim, valleys, all these angles. We had this A-frame that comes back and ties in to the house, and it just took a lot of extra time. But I will tell you, the simpler that you can make your house, the easier it's going to be to build it. This A-frame is really, really cool, but on a single-story house where it ties into the roof, it adds a lot of work and a lot of detail that is time-consuming and can be difficult. But I guess if that's what you want, don't let that discourage you. We appreciate you guys watching. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments and we'll catch you on the next video.